Here to provide an academic perspective on the 2013 legislative session, we have Dr. Larry Jacobs from the Humphrey Institute. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Good to be back with you.
Dr. Jacobs, it's early on after session, but how would you encapsulate the message of the 2013 session?
Strap on your boots, lots of work, lots of legislation. I think we're kind of back to the kind of activism and, if you're looking for a more neutral phrase, productivity from lawmaking that we saw decades ago.
How so?
Well, of course, during the Pawlenty years, and then during the Ventura years, and during the Carlson years, you had a lot of vetoes, you had a lot of deadlock, disagreement, and we just saw a steady decline in the number of bills, the amount of lawmaking that was being done. This is, as one DFLer put it to me, this is the new good old days, meaning that there was a kind of resurgence of lawmaking that we hadn't seen probably since the mid-1970s.
And having an all-DFL legislature and governor, the Governor Dayton was asked about it, governing with that kind of a legislative makeup, and he stated one word. He just thought that this session could be wrapped up by saying progressive. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think this was clearly Democratic-led, Democratic-leaning, and the governor, I think, was probably the biggest winner. Beginning of the session, he came out with a tax reform, of course, and laid out some other agenda items in the State of the State address. I think you go through that, you'll see that he achieved a lot of it, and his particular vision, let's say on tax reform, is very close to what was actually passed by the legislature, and more so the more you get into the fine print. For instance, there's been a lot of talk about sales taxes not going anywhere, but I think if you get in the fine print, you'll see these business-to-business sales taxes and the fees actually amount to quite a effort on part of the legislature and the governor.
Let's talk a little bit about policy. From a policy standpoint, what would you consider the most significant piece to pass this session?
In my view, without doubt, it was health reform. There's a whole lot there, and obviously it was quite partisan, but there were also ideas there that we'd seen Governor Pawlenty and previous sessions of the legislative branch working on that I think will become the cornerstone of the healthcare delivery system and financing system, and the kind of thing that will be worked on for decades to come.
I'd like to get your opinion on the GOP's thought of the message of this session. They concur, or they believe that the message really is overtaxing, overspending, overreaching. What are your thoughts on that?
There's no doubt that this session provides plenty of ammunition for both the Democrats, who are going to talk about raising taxes for concrete things like particularly education spending, and the Republicans are going to come back and talk about the broader message, which may actually meld with some of the controversies in Washington about too much government. This is a session that is kind of ready-made for Republicans to go to voters in 2014 and say, tax and spend Democrats are back, and here you go, and they'll point to particular parts. I think the hard part of this debate will be who shows up in 2014. If it's the electorate that showed up in 2012, which was frankly more friendly to Democrats, then I think the DFL will win. But if it's the electorate we saw in 2010, when there was obviously a takeover here by the Republicans of both the Senate and the House, I think the Republicans will find plenty here to mobilize their forces and to do quite well in taking back the House 2014.
Dr. Jacobs, although this was a budget year, there were obviously significant policy issues to come through the legislature. In your opinion, do you think this will be known? Do you think the legacy is as a budget year, or do you think it'll be because of policy?
Probably both. Clearly, the policy changes on gay marriage, on the symbolic step on unionization of child care workers and personal health care attendants, and health reform are going to probably put a big stamp. And I think, in 10 or 20 years, when my colleagues and I are writing the history of this session, those would be some of the things that people stand out. And it'll be pro and con. We'll have the perspective of hindsight. My hunch is these are probably, particularly on the same-sex marriage and healthcare reform, the kinds of things that last.
Was labor underscored this year, in your opinion?
Oh, this is probably the best year for organized labor in four decades. The Clearly, the unionization battle on child care and the personal health care attendants. It's about 12 to 21,000 voters out of a workforce of about 2.5 million. So it's not going to change the workplace, but I think symbolically it's such a dramatic contrast with what's happened in Wisconsin, where collective bargaining rights have been rolled back, that I think that'll stand that as a symbolic step.
You've been following the legislature for decades, so how would you encapsulate the dynamics of this session, particularly those last 6 or 8 hours when things were kind of at a standstill? Is it kind of business as usual in your opinion, or is there anything that stands out?
I would say this was kind of a stampede for the lawmaking books, and at the end there were some choices that the DFL leaders had to make about which cattle were going to cross the finish line. And there was some jostling there, and I think I was here last night, and there was a lot of excitement about what was going to prevail and what would be left behind, perhaps for the 2014 session. But I think stampede. You have lawmakers, the DFL side, who have been waiting for a generation to move this legislation. Once you had a DFL government, you saw them basically getting on the horses and saying, now's why I've been sitting here for a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. Giddy up and let's charge. And a lot of those bills came down to last couple nights whether they would pass.
I want to ask you one last question concerning social media and the use of it during the legislature. And it seems to have exploded, and it seemed to take on a different tone this year than it has in the past. There was a little more calling out of other people instead of just shots towards another party. So do you think that social media is changing the way the legislature works, changing the landscape of how things are done? The negotiating, because things are publicized.
Yeah, the idea of a backroom deal, it's going to be harder and harder. There were tweets when there would be a spotting of Leader Bach meeting with Speaker Thiessen, and a lot of speculation as to what they were going to be talking about. And so no, the backroom deal is all of a sudden people are staring in the windows. They don't know exactly what's being said, but they have a good idea. I think this is a new era, and it has upsides and downsides. The upside is there's more transparency. If you want to follow what's going on minute by minute, and I have to admit I became an addict of this, you could do it. And you didn't mean you had to kind of come up here and talk to people. You could follow it wherever you were. The downside is, there was a lot of spinning, and there was, some sharp elbows that were thrown. It wasn't always, kind of proper decorum. And I was tweeting, and I took some sharp shots to the chin. It's fair enough, but it's a more bruising and not always particularly accurate way to kind of follow what's going on here. That may be playing into legislature and how some things got played out. Also seemed to really mobilize the troops. We saw some very raucous demonstrations here. Absolutely appropriate First Amendment sort of things, particularly unionization in the last couple of days, but same-sex marriage moments. And I think social media was very helpful and efficiently calling out both sides of that debate.
Okay, Dr. Larry Jacobs, we're out of time, but thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Good to be with you again.